Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am Jeff Maloff, and with me, as always, my good buddy, Mark Souza. We're going to be talking about our sleepers for this week in the week of football, week 6. We're also going to be talking about our buyers and sellers and some other things as well when it comes to our beautiful world of fantasy football. Let's start with our sleepers, because that's how we organize this.
Ooh, actually, hold on.
What?
I think we need to start with you doing push-ups.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I lost the bet.
Tell everybody why you are doing push-ups today, Jeff.
Well, you were saying you were up by like 60 or so points against a guy who had Michael Thomas, Chris Thompson, and Mark Ingram, and the New Orleans defense. And I said you're screwed, saying you're going to lose.
I won.
By how much, though?
I think by 10.
Yeah, it was close.
It wasn't that close.
50 points is a lot.
It was nervy after the first quarter because Ingram had a really good start.
He had 2 rushing touchdowns.
But then the Saints defense started giving up a little bit of points, and then Michael Thomas was nowhere to be found.
So I'm going to go right now and do it. Hold on.
10 push-ups. We'll count, Jeff.
I'll count.
No knees.
2,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Jeff, a man of his word. You can at him at Jeff Malinoff on Twitter. Tell him
those push-ups were legitimate?
I didn't see the whole thing, but they looked pretty good. I'm not questioning you at all.
Okay, good. I was like, why? I wasn't on my knees, at least. You saw that part.
Yeah,
that
no,
was
you
the most
did.
Important part.
You did good. You're a man of your word.
Yeah.
Now
I'm strong.
Very honorable gentleman here, Jeff Malinoff.
Thank you, sir.
Now we can proceed with the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Now so let's talk about sleepers / guys you can stream off the waiver wire this week who could be potential slot. Like there's some players on buys this week, like the Saints, for example. You might need a receiver to replace Michael Thomas. You might need somebody to replace Kamara, Ingram.
They're going to need someone to replace Kamara and Ingram.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it. Jeff, who's a quarterback that you like that's readily available in most leagues? Now, of course, depending on the league that you're in, these players could already be on rosters, but we're talking about players who are likely to be under 50% owned or so.
What position are we going on
Let's
first?
go quarterback.
I got C.J. Beathard.
He's
only 12% taken in most in the leagues.
Yeah, he should be available in most leagues. So tell me your reasoning why you think he's a solid streamer for this week against the Packers on Monday Night Football.
In his first 2 games, he's averaged over 20 points, which is pretty good. And the Packers defense is not that stellar, to be completely honest with you. They need a lot of work done. And Kyle Shanahan knows how to run an offense, knows how to get the best out of his players. And it shows, the defense is what's losing the games for the 49ers and costly turnovers. But I think C.J. Beathard's going to have a good game against this Packers defense. But Kyle Shanahan's going to give him a couple touchdown passes, and that 20 points average is going to stay in that 20-point average. It's not going to go below 20.
Yeah, okay. So I'll give you my quarterback to pick up. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
I got Jameis Winston. I don't really like him as your quarterback for the rest of the season, but I think that he's playing in a game against the Falcons where there's going to be a lot of points scored, and his team will be behind for most of the game. With Atlanta's inability to cover receivers, you have Mike Evans, you have Deshaun Jackson, you have Chris Godwin, and of course, one of his favorite targets, very underrated Cameron Brate at tight end. So I have Winston being a nice little spot play for you if you have a quarterback like Drew Brees or so on bye, or maybe you have another quarterback who's facing a very tough matchup this week. I'd say go ahead and start Winston. What's your opinion on that?
I can see that. He just struggled last week when he started, or when he got it back into the game. I mean, but take that gamble. I mean, you're not going to play. He's not a full-time starter. He's only for this week probably if you're going to play him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So what about running back? Who do you have as a guy that you'd be able to pick up at running back for this week? Say you have an Alvin Kamara type player who's on bye. Maybe you have a guy like Matt Breida who's injured right now. So with that being said, who do you like at running back that you could pick up this week if you need a guy to come in and be a spot play?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Mike Davis from Seattle.
Mike Davis from Seattle, okay.
He had over 100 yards rushing last week, And even though he's going to share a lot of it with Chris Carson, a lot of the snaps that is, I feel like he's going to get, since he had a good game last week, he's going to get some good rushes in. He might get good about 10, 15 points, I would say. That's probably his ceiling, but still a good amount of points for your second running back.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike Davis, he had a great game 2 weeks ago, and again, he had a decent game last week. I'm actually going to say Duke Johnson from Cleveland is my...
You do know he complained not getting enough snaps, right?
He complained, but you know what? He did lead the team in snaps last week, which is interesting to say the least.
He didn't get a lot of touches, though. That's the problem.
He didn't. He was out-touched by Hyde 2-1 there, so he had a lot more snaps than Hyde. But I think that in this game against the Chargers team, I think it'll be a game that features a lot of passing. I don't see Carlos Hyde having a relatively good game, but I would see Duke Johnson being the running back here in this game. He could probably have 5 or 6 catches for maybe 55 to 60 yards and a touchdown. I think that's would be a decent spot play for you.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, but again, that's a gamble because of Carlos Hyde, and he'll get most of the snaps though.
Okay, so let's move on to wide receiver.
Okay, you go first.
All right, I'm going to go with Quincy Enunwa, wide receiver for the New York Jets.
Because of their matchup and because he's basically that's Darnold's go-to?
Yeah, so he was shut out last week. He had a really tough matchup against Chris Harris Jr. As we know, Denver has one cornerback, and that's Chris Harris, who's a shutdown corner. So it was a very tough day for Enunwa. But what I do like about Enunwa is that Darnold has shown that in games he can go to him consistently, and he's getting 27% of the targets from the passing game, which is a really high number. That actually puts him in the top 10 in target share. So I think that Quincy Enunwa, better days will be ahead for him. He's a guy that some people have dropped. He certainly was on a roster, especially after that Week 1 game against Detroit. But he's had his last 2 games, 4 catches, 57 yards, 66 yards. I'm sure that he's a player that was a popular drop in the last couple weeks, and then he had no catches last week against Denver. So I think he's a player that you could buy, get from the waiver wire right now, and that he could be on your roster for weeks, maybe the rest of the season, just because the volume is there. The Jets are going to be playing games where they will be throwing the football. Last week was a weird week where the Jets won that game, but they didn't have too many offensive snaps. Their touchdowns were on big plays, short drives, and their defense was on the field for most of that game. But against Indianapolis, I think that you'll see more offensive plays and more opportunity for Quincy Enunwa. So, with that being said, who is your wide receiver that you're picking up this week if you need a spot play?
Well, I'm getting Sano from the Atlanta Falcons. He's been getting a lot of passes lately, getting a lot of breakout yards, and I think it's going to be a key factor in the Falcons' offense to come because Julio Jones is being covered. Calvin Ridley is still getting those red zone catches, but I would say Sano is still getting those deep balls thrown to him.
Yeah, and a great matchup against the Bucs, who can't defend
absolutely.
anybody. So I think it's safe to say that you just want to get any Falcons and Buccaneers receiver in this game. Would you say?
Oh yeah,
like
totally.
Just play them. Like if you have them,
Take advantage of it.
Deshaun Jackson, Godwin, Evans.
It's gonna be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, I mean both teams, Sanu, Ridley, and of course Julio. Maybe Julio get in the end zone this week. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Because
Julio knows.
Julio doesn't because he hasn't been in the end zone this whole season.
All right, so let's move on to tight end. Who's your pick, Jeff?
My pick is because of the loss of Eifert from Cincinnati. I'm going to go with EJ.
CJ Uzoma?
Or CJ Uzoma, thank you. I don't know why I said EJ. Not EJ Manuel, but CJ Uzoma. Is that how you say it?
Uzoma.
Yes. It's hard to pronounce. I'm sorry. But with loss of Eifert and a horrible ankle injury, he's going to be taking some snaps. He's going to be might be not looked at in coverage, and he might find some open spots and maybe even a touchdown. So we'll see how he does. But he's definitely one of those guys you will look at just to get.
And the matchup is good, right, against Pittsburgh?
Oh, absolutely. Like Pittsburgh's defense is lacking, especially against tight ends. So
they might be focused on AJ Green too.
Absolutely, AJ Green is the go-to receiver, so they're going to be concentrating on him, and he's going to be open to someplace. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I like that selection. CJ Uzoma, I know the Bengals like him. He's their preferred tight end now to take over for Tyler Eifert. So, my tight end for this weekend will be Cameron Brate, Tampa Bay. Jameis Winston loves Cameron Brate. Jameis Winston and Cameron Brate have a connection that Winston may not have with some other receivers on that team. I do like all the receivers in this game for Tampa Bay. I expect Winston to probably throw for 350 or so, at least in a high-scoring game where they're coming from behind. But Brate was the number 4 tight end last year when Jameis Winston was a quarterback. So I expect that connection to be rekindled this weekend as Winston now will start in replace of Ryan Fitzpatrick, who seemed to prefer throwing the ball to the receivers on the outside. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could see that. Honestly, with the Buccaneers, it can go either way. It can go really, really good or really, really bad, and it has happened this whole season.
Cool. So give me a defense that you are streaming this week, a matchup that you like. Let's say
it's going to feel weird since I picked the quarterback they're playing against, but the Green Bay Packers.
So you're telling me that I should start C.J. Beathard and the Green Bay Packers?
Well, no, because there's going to be some different teams, and I'm saying, like, if you don't have C.J. Beathard, go for the Green Bay Packers.
All these mixed signals here.
God, my love life in a nutshell right there. Anyways, but no, the Green Bay, because there was a lot of mental errors by the San Francisco 49ers. They got all the yards and touchdowns.
They give up a lot of turnovers, right?
Exactly. That's why I'm saying go with Green Bay, because there's a lot of mental errors that the 49ers have made in the past, and you should take advantage of that with the Green Bay Packers.
Here's my theory. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
But I still think C.J. Beathard could have a good day, but I would not, if you need a defense and there's only a couple left, I would go with Green Bay.
Okay, so like C.J. Beathard, you mentioned that he had a couple good games, but also the defenses that played against the Niners had good games too recently because of the turnovers and things like that.
A lot of mental errors.
Yeah,
it's not the offensive fault. It's like just stupid things that have happened that they lose a fumble or throw an unnecessary pick.
So what you're looking,
bad luck.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're looking for when you stream a defense is you're not exactly looking for a good defense. You're looking for a defense that's playing against a bad offense and the opportunity to make plays. And that's what I think your point is, right? The Packers are not necessarily a good defense, but the Niners have made mistakes and they continue to turn the ball over, which leads to not just turnovers, but the opportunity to take one to the house. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I could see that. But it's just a lot of things could happen. There's a lot of different elements in this, but there are going to be points had.
So I have 3 defenses that I pick 3.
You pick 3?
I pick 3.
You can't do that.
No. I'll tell you who I prefer.
Okay.
But I picked 3 to give the audience 3 options because maybe 1 or 2 of these are taken.
Okay.
Jets defense is my number 1. They're playing against the Colts.
I don't think they're going to be picked up.
They're available in a couple leagues for sure. I'm looking at a few of my leagues this morning, and they're available.
Okay.
They're playing the Colts with no T.Y. Hilton. They're already a pretty good defense, a very underrated defense. I'm not exactly sure why they're still available.
Why do you think?
So let me tell you the first 5 weeks of the Jets defense.
It's the Jets, that's why I'm saying.
So I'm going to tell you their points. You tell me if this is a good defense. 27 points, 13 points, 7 points, 7 points, 10 points. I think that's pretty solid production, wouldn't you say? No bad games in there at all.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Like that those stats speak for themselves. But what I'm saying is, it's the Jets. That's why people are like backing off, because it does have a history of unluckiness with the defensive side.
You're right. So the Jets are the number 2 ranked team by points in fantasy football for defense. They play a Colts team coming into New York with no T.Y. Hilton. Andrew Luck is a good player, but he's not immune to making mistakes, as we saw against the Patriots last week, where he threw an interception early on in that game. The Jets, I don't think, give up a lot in the running game. I think they play most of this game from ahead, which means that the Colts will get in predictable passing situations. The Jets are my number 1 streamer for this week. I have 2 more.
Go for it.
Chargers defense. They're most likely taken. They're higher percentage taken than the Jets defense. However, the Browns offense has been playing a lot better, but Baker Mayfield is still taking 4 to 5 sacks a game. When you get sacks, you get the opportunity for turnovers.
You get points off sacks too. Don't remember that.
Yeah, but you get the points for the sack for sure, but it gives you the opportunity to get an interception. Maybe the quarterback gets hit as he's throwing the football. Maybe he fumbles the ball getting hit on a strip sack or something like that. Guys like Melvin Ingram, they can make some plays. I think the Chargers defense is a solid play, and I have one more for you. This defense, again, not sure they're available, but if they are, snag them up quickly before your opponent does. Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins are playing against the Bears. I'm not sold that Trubisky in that last game was
You think those 6 touchdowns is a fluke?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Bears are doing good things, and I think it's positive, but Miami has a sneaky good defense. Their offense is a little bit off. Like, their offense is weird. Their offensive fantasy players are hard to predict, and they're probably giving a lot of our audience headaches from week to week, but the Miami defense, they play against Trubisky, who's still a young quarterback. Xavier Howard is a very good cornerback. He will be shadowing Allen Robinson. If Trubisky forces the ball in there, look for some interceptions. Those are my 3 defenses that you should look for if you need one in a pinch. So we'll go to a quick break. When we get back, we have some start or sit players that, Jeff, I'll be asking you what you'll do if these players are on your roster.
I like it. We'll see you there.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We just talked about our sleepers and waiver wire pickups. Now we're going to our starting and sitting players. You're telling me who to start and sit. You're going to give me random players. I'm going to name them on the spot. Give me the number 1 name.
LaShawn McCoy and the Buffalo Bills, they play. They go down to Houston, so they're going to play against that tough defense. LaShawn McCoy is coming off a solid game as he had 11.8 fantasy points and half PPR scoring. All the scoring that I'll be saying will be half PPR, by the way. 11.8, which was his best game yet. 24 carries, 85 yards, so not the most efficient, but the volume is there. LaShawn McCoy, do you start him or sit him this week against Houston?
I'm sitting.
You're going to sit him? Tell me why.
J.J. Watt and Clowney for one.
Okay.
Both sides of the ball. He likes to run the outside. He doesn't really go on the inside very much, compared to the outside at least.
Ezekiel Elliott had a tough game, too, against Houston.
Yeah, so that's why I'm going to say LeSean McCoy, sit him.
Okay, so you think that he'll go under. He's projected to get 11 fantasy points. You'd say under?
I'll say under.
Okay. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think that you can start McCoy. I mean, obviously, depending on your roster. If you need a flex player, if you need an RB2, I think that he'll be okay. Like, I think that he'll get at least 6 or 7 fantasy points just because the volume will be there. He'll probably have 3 or 4 receptions, which will give you a couple points. 20, 30 yards in the passing game will get you a couple points, plus the rushing yards. So I would say that he's not a terrible play, but if you have a better option, start that over him. Okay, so let's move on to Phillip Rivers. Would you start him against the Cleveland Browns this week? The Browns' defense has been better. They are on the road, so Rivers tends to be a little bit better at home. The pass rush for the Browns has been pretty good. So do you start Phillip Rivers?
I sit.
So you're going to sit Phillip Rivers.
The Browns maybe have one of the best defenses in the league, turnover-based wise, and you don't want that to face a guy who struggles away, especially on the Chargers. So I'm going to say sit.
Phillip Rivers' first 5 games, 34 points, 28 points, 21, 27, 25. So he's been pretty consistent. 21 being the lowest game, that's really good. But you'd be if you had him on your team, you'd be worried about him this week.
Especially against the Browns, yes.
Okay. I think you can play him. I would start him, but I would expect closer to 21 points than to 28 points, like he normally gets.
Fair enough.
So,
Fair enough.
Okay. How about Jordan Howard going against Miami on the road? The Bears, obviously, coming off of a bye week. Jordan Howard has been kind of underwhelming this year so far. His first 4 games, 13 points, 8 points, 15 points, and 2 points. So tell me what you think about him.
The Miami rushing defense is nothing to write home about, so I'm going to say start.
Miami's defense is actually pretty good.
The rush defense is not. The passing defense is good.
Okay. This one's a tough one for me. I mean, his last game was 2.5 fantasy points.
Well, that's why they threw the ball all the time. They're going to run the ball this time.
Yeah, this game will be more even for sure in the run pass ratio. So I'd say start him. I mean, he's still gonna get all the goal line work. He's still getting probably 15 to 20 carries this game. If he scores a touchdown and he gets you 15 to 20 carries, you're looking at a minimum of 13 to 14 fantasy points. I say start him. I say not with the most confidence, but unless you have a better option, go ahead and play him.
And I agree with this. Yes, so play.
All right, so next one. Adrian Peterson and his shoulder injury. They are playing Carolina. This is a tough one for me. Would you start Adrian Peterson even though he says he's going to play? We don't know how effective he'll be. He had a really bad game against the Saints. I think everybody on Washington did. But would you start Adrian Peterson this week?
That's a really tough one. I'll let you go first because I got to think about this.
I would sit him unless I know for sure, unless I just absolutely have to play him because he has 2 games where he has under 20 yards rushing. He's not doing much in the passing game, although he had 2 catches for 36 yards, which really helped his 5 points last week. That was about half of it right there, or actually almost all of it, as he only had 6 rushing yards. So I say sit him. Sit him.
Really?
Sit him. Sit him.
I might have to agree with
dislocated shoulder. I don't care if he says he's playing. That's an injury that's going to get. He's going to get hit so many times in his shoulder this Sunday.
I'm gonna say I agree with you on that one.
It would be one thing if the matchup was really strong, like if it was like an easier matchup, but it's not. It's a tough matchup. It's a tough game. Matchup. So I say sit him.
This
okay.
is not easy.
So I'm going to tell
It's
you.
not easy being green.
I'm going to tell you a player that I think can be on the start or sit conversation every single week because he's probably the most maddening fantasy football player to own, especially at wide receiver.
He's good at Madden. Is that what you're saying?
Do you know who I'm talking about?
I think I do, but go on.
Amari Cooper against the Seahawks.
That's what I
So
thought.
let me read you his last 5 fantasy games. 2 points, 18, 2, 24, 1. This is a
you
joke.
saying a binary code?
This is a joke, right?
1011, yeah. Not coming from a guy that everyone thought was going to go off this season. This is incredibly shocking and very hard to really.
Seattle's defense can be beat.
I can't put my finger on how well he'll do. It's so difficult to really.
I can put my finger on it because if you follow the path, he should have 20 fantasy points this week because he had a dud last week, right?
Yeah, you got a point there.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if he does have a really good game because he literally would be following the pattern of dud, good, dud, good, dud, good.
It's like duck, duck, goose. It sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dud.
So are you starting him or sitting him? Against Seattle in London. Maybe he needs to go to a different country to get right.
You know what? I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to start him.
Yeah, I start him. Start him.
This is a big risk, though. It's a big risk, high reward type of thing.
Start him. I think you'll see 15 fantasy points for him.
That many, really?
Yeah, because I can see 10 catches for 100 yards.
10 catches for 100 yards. Okay.
That's 15 in half.
I know what that is.
Yeah. Okay.
We do a fantasy football podcast. I should know what that means. What do you think I am? Just some unconscious... What?
You're the push-ups guy.
I'm the push-ups... I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
How about we talk about another wide receiver?
How about you come with me and you'll see in a world of pure imagination. Sorry, I was watching...
You ready for...
I was watching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
You ready for this?
Yeah, go on.
Da-da-da-da. All right. Robbie Anderson coming off his 3-catch, 123-yard performance against the Denver Broncos.
Not going to happen again.
Not going to happen again, you say?
The 3 catches over 100 yards? Yeah, no way.
So, over under 10 fantasy points. Which he's only done it one time. That was last week.
I'll say under. I'll say sit.
Sit.
Good boy.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to say sit until I see more. I got to see another big game for him, or at least more targets, because his most receptions he has in a game this year is 3. That's not doing it for me. I'm sorry, but
that's good.
I'm sorry. I love taking chances and risk, and Robbie Anderson's probably a great daily fantasy player. He probably won people a lot of money last week, actually, but
because he was so cheap and he got a lot of points.
Exactly. I mean, you got 30 points for him, and he cost probably 4,000 on DraftKings, whatever on FanDuel. So. I say bench him until he gets more targets, more receptions. He's had one game over 41 receiving yards, 1 game, 2 games at 3 receptions, no
sit
games
him.
higher.
We both agree to sit him.
Okay. Do you want to go to tight ends?
Sure.
How about David Njoku, Cleveland Browns? He's coming off of 8 points and 9 points in his last 2 games. He plays the Chargers. Do you start or sit him? Sit, okay. I'll say start.
Okay. I know I'm saying sit to a lot of these guys, but it's like...
Tell me why you would sit him.
Because 8 points is not going to win me a game. It's like I need someone more reliable than that.
He hasn't reached the end zone this year, which is a little bit...
And that's a huge factor, is no touchdowns. I need touchdowns from my tight end.
So I'm going to say start him, and this is my reasoning why. Casey Hayward is a very good cornerback. I think he'll be covering Jarvis Landry, which I think will funnel targets towards David Njoku. However, Derwin James is a really good safety. But Derwin James is moved around a lot. They use him a lot to blitz. If he's predominantly covering Njoku, then I think that it's going to be a disaster for people who play Njoku. But I'm counting on him having a few big plays where Derwin James is not covering him. I say start him. It's risky.
Take advantage of certain defensive setups.
Yeah, it's risky for sure. I'm going to go on a hunch right here and say go ahead and start him up. How about, Jeff, we go with one other tight end. He's a familiar name, but he's a guy who's missed a lot of time. Greg Olsen. He's back from injury. And you know how much Cam Newton likes him, you know.
That's his go-to. Because
Right.
his receivers are not reliable to catch the ball like Olsen is.
So Greg Olsen, he's coming back.
I'll start him.
He plays against the Redskins.
Starting him.
You start him for sure?
Cam Newton loves him. They have a good chemistry together.
Do you think, though, his foot injury, though, will be a concern? Because he's coming back.
He's coming back. He's going to probably feel fresh.
He only played the first quarter of the first game of the season so far, where he had 2 catches for 33 yards,
He's going to be a go-to receiver still when he comes back, so I say start him.
I say start him, too. If he's playing, just play him.
Yeah.
Like,
You got nothing to lose in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have any starter sits that anybody on your fantasy team, Jeff, that you're actually wondering about if you should play? Because I'd love to help you out. If you have any questions.
No, I think I'm pretty settled. Like I'm doing mainly daily fantasy this week. Just daily fantasy for me this week.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so that will do it for this segment. When we come back, we're going to play our favorite game that we like to play called Fantasy Buy or Sell, where we disagreed heavily last week, mostly about Calvin Ridley. But we'll see who we pick this week. Jeff's going to give you 3 players that he's looking to buy and 3 players he's looking to sell, and I'm going to be doing the same.
We will see who's right. It's going to be me.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We talked about our sleepers for this week. We talked about who we sit and who we start. Now we're going to talk about our buyers and sellers. Would you like to start, or would you like me to start?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay.
We'll do buys first. How about that?
I like to buy.
My first one is Jordan Reed.
Okay.
Tight end, Washington Redskins. I think he always has the upside because of his athleticism. He's had a slow start. There's always an injury risk here. But I think you might be able to get him on the real cheap. If you can get him on the cheap, why not take a chance on him? There's not too many tight ends in the NFL that really are difference makers past like the top 3 or 4. But Jordan Reed does have the ability to be one of those guys to be a top 3 or 4 fantasy receiver once he gets the volume and his health. So
I can see that. That's logical.
Who's your first one for buys? Who are you buying?
I'm getting Sony Michel.
Sony Michel, okay. That's a good one. His price is kind of high right now because he has done well.
Yes.
But you're all in on him?
Oh yeah, he's been. This is what the Patriots needed for a strong running game, not just a pass, not just a receiving back. He's a running back. So
what about James White? Are you trying to buy him too? They both have been putting up big numbers.
I was gonna also buy Wendell Smallwood because he had a good game against the Giants last night. He had an average game, sure, but I think this is going to be the main guy they're going to use in the running game until they get someone new. So why not take the guy while he's going to be probably their starting running back for a couple more weeks?
Yeah, Smallwood and Clement both played had their time, but Smallwood actually got more snaps. So
yeah, that's why I'm going Smallwood over.
Even though Clement had the more points, but I could see that shifting the other way for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So Wendell Smallwood is your second one, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So my number 2 is Jordan Howard.
Buying or selling?
Buying.
Okay.
I'm buying Jordan Howard because there's some owners out there who are probably disappointed because they spent a second-round pick on him, possibly a third, but most likely a second, and he hasn't panned out so far, as he's the 37 ranked running back as of right now in fantasy football. I'm buying because he's going to get all the goal line work. They do use him in the passing game. I just see better days ahead for him, so maybe you can get an owner who's antsy on him, disappointed on him. Maybe you can get him for a decent wide receiver. Maybe you're not giving up your top receiver, but maybe you're giving up a second or third wide receiver for a potentially RB1.
Yeah, he's yeah, I can see what you're saying there. That makes sense. He is due for a big game. Long overdue, actually.
Yeah. So we will see if Jordan Howard can be the running back that people drafted him, be that running back who people who drafted him thought he would be, as he tries to get back on track this season. The Bears offense too, I want to say, is that I really like Nagy, their coach. I think he's a interesting play caller, a smart offensive mind. So Jordan Howard could be a guy that has a breakout second half of the season.
Right. One more buy or going to sell?
Yeah, let me get your last buy.
Dante Moncrief.
Okay, Jacksonville.
Yeah. He was good in Indianapolis. Now with Jacksonville, he's starting to get into a chemistry with Blake Bortles, and I only see positive things from here on out.
Dante Moncrief, yeah, absolutely. Are you worried, though, that the Jacksonville Jaguars seem to use different receivers all the time, like Keelan Cole's their guy one day, D.D. Westbrook?
I feel like Blake Bortles has to go to someone mainly, and he's going to go to Moncrief mainly.
Yeah,
he's the veteran. He knows what to do, and it just feels like that's the right choice.
Yeah, he has been a solid option for Bortles lately, as he's looked to him more often recently. My last player that I'm looking to buy is LaShawn McCoy. He just had a decent game, but he still hasn't had a big game. So
you're going to be shocked by what I say in selling.
So the cost tier for McCoy should be low, but if he's traded to Philadelphia, his stock skyrockets. And a guy like Wendell Smallwood, who you have as a buy, who I think is a good buy, will have a tough time seeing the field when LaShawn McCoy is there.
I get that. I'm just thinking of it right now.
So I think that McCoy will be better for the rest of the season, even if he stays with Buffalo. But if he goes to Philadelphia, you just got a huge shot in your fantasy team's arm, where that could be a move that could potentially win you a league.
Kids.
So that's who we have. You have, so again, to recap, you have Sony Michel, Wendell Smallwood, Dante Moncrief. My three fantasy buys this week are Jordan Reed, Jordan Howard, with Sean McCoy.
You like those Jordans, don't you?
Oh, yeah. So let's go to sell.
You're going to be surprised by my first one. Sean McCoy.
You're going to sell him?
He had a good game, but he's on a bad team. His offensive line doesn't really give him much time to do anything positive. When he does something positive, it's very short burst. I don't see a big season out of him if he stays in Buffalo. If he goes to Philadelphia, a whole different story. But with Buffalo, I got to sell him. Got to get someone out there that can give me more points.
Would you wait, though, until he has like a really big game? Because right now you're probably not going to get what you want for him because he's only had one decent game and a bunch of bad games.
You could probably fool a sucker into, because it's LaShawn McCoy. He was a fantasy
If you sell him, you got to. If you sell LaShawn McCoy, you have to sell that person, that other owner, on the idea that he's getting traded.
You got to be a good salesman.
Yeah, that you got to.
I do have a salesman license.
You got to sell the trade part. That he's going to Philadelphia. He's going to be their starting running back. So, okay. You want to know my first one?
Yes.
Carlos Hyde.
Okay. I see that. I can see that.
He's consistent. He's had a good season.
But you don't think
he's losing snaps to Duke Johnson and Nick Chubb. They drafted that running back, Chubb, to be the potential long-term answer for him. I just think that Carlos Hyde, he does get all the red zone action, so there's value there. His upside is just limited, though. Mm-hmm. You might be able to trade him as an RB1 and get a good player in return for him, even though he's not an RB1. His numbers might suggest that he is an RB1, but he's not an RB1. He will not be an RB1 at the end of the season. So That's my first sell.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Who's your second sell?
Matt Breida.
Matt Breida. Okay, popular. I think that's an interesting conversation because he's had a big first part of the season, but he's been hurt.
Yes, that's the main part.
Are you selling his health? Is that what you're selling on?
I'm selling mainly his health, yeah. But also, like, Alfred Morris is doing very well without him. And it just seems like they're honestly preferring to pass the ball more than anything. So I feel like he's going to get less and less carries as the season progresses. And that's just my take on it.
He gets a lot of passing game action, but he just has to stay on the field. Like I think
my main
the
thing.
sell here,
he's on the sidelines way too often.
The sell here is that you don't expect him to last a full season, right? Like he's been injured, he's hurt, he's probably not playing this weekend. Mm-hmm. You might want to sell him now before
it's too late.
Before it's too late, I agree. You want to know who my number 2 is?
Go for it.
James Conner.
Okay, really?
Yes.
Do you think Le'Veon's going to make a comeback? Is that why you're selling him?
Yes.
I see.
And right now his value is really high.
Okay.
Because he just had his great game. Remember his game this last weekend?
Yes, he had a very good game. No question about it.
Maybe the best game of the weekend. One of the best games of the weekend. So,
okay, easy.
James Conner, I think you can sell him. I would look for an RB2 and a wide receiver 2 in return. Maybe somebody's out there.
2 players for him.
Maybe somebody is out there thinking that, hey, I'm not worried about Le'Veon Bell. I think that when he comes back, he'll still have some value.
Yes, I do. I got a Le'Veon. How about you? Sorry.
Maybe there's an owner out there who needs a win. What if somebody's like 0-5 or 1-4, and they're like, you know what? I could really use James Conner for 3 weeks. Even though he might not be my long-term answer, I need to start winning some games to be a playoff contender in my fantasy league. Maybe you can wrangle somebody into taking that trade.
Yeah, you got to do some convincing to me if I was the one you're trading to, but yeah, I could see where you're coming from.
And that's why I say RB2 in return or a wide receiver 2. I'm not asking for a lot.
Main starter.
Yeah, I'm not asking for an Antonio Brown or a DeAndre Hopkins. I'm talking about a guy like, I don't know, maybe I can get a Brandon Cooks. Maybe I can get...
That's even asking for a lot.
Yeah, it might be, but you never know.
I mean, no one had Connor. No one had drafted him at the beginning of the season. It's just one of those things where that's a big risk, small reward type of thing.
Who's your last player that you're selling on?
My last player that I'm selling is I don't know what you're gonna think about this, but
probably hate it.
You probably hate it. George Kittle.
Okay.
Because he's still a go-to receiver, but he's on a team that's just making too many mental errors, and I feel like people are going to think he's averaging a good amount of points, sure, but I still think that he's going to be a guy who's going to disappoint a lot of people at the end of the season, so why not sell him now while he's doing still okay?
Well, who would you sell him for?
Give me you can trade me another one tight end. He's probably people's one's tight end. You could probably switch that to other people's one's tight end.
Give me a realistic option that somebody might trade for Kittle. That will
Jordan Reed.
Okay, so you would trade for Jordan Reed?
Yeah.
It's a gamble, but I can see it.
Keeping Kittle is also the gamble. That's
sure.
What I'm saying.
He is consistent, but yeah, you never know. That offense, that team, you don't know what's going to happen. So
yeah, that's why I'm thinking he's a good piece of meat to hang on the hook.
My last sell will be Lamar Miller, Houston Texans.
I think everyone's selling Lamar Miller.
I don't think you can get a lot for him right now, but I don't think he's worth much, and I think that I would rather take a gamble on somebody than keep Lamar Miller, if that makes sense.
No, I didn't know what you're talking about.
Like, I would rather take, I don't know, Ronald Jones. I would rather take someone like that, somebody who's disappointing, somebody who, when they open their phone up and they say, oh, wow, somebody offered me Lamar Miller. I don't really like Lamar Miller, but I really don't like this other guy on my team, so sure, I'll take the trade.
Okay, I see where you're getting at.
My point is that Lamar Miller is not very good, and Deontay Foreman is coming off of the PUP list this week, and I think he's a real threat to take Lamar Miller's job because they invested a third-round pick in Foreman. They liked what they saw in him before he got injured, and he's eligible to return. Lamar Miller is just not a very good player. He hasn't put up good numbers. He's just a guy who's been there, and they need a fresh running back, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
They need an infusion of talent at that position. So,
yes, I agree with that.
So that's what we got for buy or sell again. My 3 buys are Jordan Reed, Jordan Howard, LaShawn McCoy. Jeff's 3 buys are Sony Michel, Wendell Smallwood, Dante Moncrief. Mark's 3 sells are Carlos Hyde, James Conner, Lamar Miller. Jeff's 3 sells are LaShawn McCoy, Matt Breida, George Kittle. So that's what we got here. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to do our favorite segment, Jeff. The one that cost you. Well, wait, it didn't cost you. The one that you won, though, last week. I think we'll do a push-up bet for this week because we didn't do a push-up bet.
You want a rematch on this?
Yeah, you won last week, but we didn't bet on it. We'll do a 10 push-up bet. We're going to pick, of course, our teams where we have 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 receiver, 1 tight end, and we tally up the points, and then we go from there. So we'll do that right after this.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. We are going to talk about our final lineups for this week. Would you like to start? Or would
I'll
you
let
like me
you
to
go.
start?
I'll punt.
Okay, you'll punt? You mean you'll kick off?
I'll defer.
Come on, man. Get the sayings right. Anyways, so I'm going to go off this based off who I picked in my daily fantasy, who I thought was going to have a good games and such. So my one of my first lineups is I have Kirk Cousins as my quarterback this week.
Wow. You have Kirk Cousins this week?
Yeah.
There's some attractive options. I was not expecting that.
Just watch.
I'm not saying that you're wrong.
Don't believe me, just watch.
I thought you were going to go with Mahomes or Brady.
No.
I am going to go with...
No, we can't do Monday night. Oh, that's Sunday night. I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah. You can't do Packers or Niners players. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with... Okay, Mahomes and Brady is going to be spectacular, but I think the better play here is Matt Ryan.
Okay.
So I will take Matt Ryan, and then we will go to running backs. And I think you know who I'm going to take. I'm taking Todd Gurley.
Damn it. Well, that's not... Okay, fine.
You get the next running back, and then you get the next receiver.
Okay. My next receiver... I'll say my next receiver. Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, you didn't pick a running back, though.
I know. I had to take him before anything else. He's okay. Important. And for running back... See, this is... You took Todd Gurley from me. This is where things get hairy. But I'm going to go Sony Michel.
Sony Michel. Wow.
Take a chance on him.
Okay, Sony Michel. So tell me why you're taking Kirk Cousins and not Brady or Mahomes.
Facing the worst team in the league. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's all I need to say.
All right, and then tell me why Sony Michel is going to have a huge game against the Chiefs.
Because he can run the ball, and he's a good go-to receiver, and he's a dual threat, and Kansas City's defense is lackluster at best. I think he's going to have a good game.
Yeah. And Tyreek Hill?
Yes. Is there any... Do I need to explain that one?
I don't know. Just give me your...
Fastest guy on the field.
He's the fastest guy on the field, that's for sure.
And he can catch the ball.
He definitely can do those things. So, I have Matt Ryan because they're playing the Bucs. I mean, I think he's going to have 350 yards and 4 touchdown passes.
Okay.
Julio Jones, breakout game. And that's also who I'm picking.
So you got Julio and who else?
Gurley, Matt Ryan.
Julio.
Yeah.
That's a risk.
You think that's a risk?
Going with a quarterback and wide receiver? Because if he goes to somebody else, you lose points on that.
That might be true, but I'm going Julio, and I think he'll have a breakout game.
Who's your other receiver?
Well, we're only doing one receiver.
Oh, so. We're only doing one? Oh, okay. I thought we were doing two. Okay.
Yeah.
Who's your tight end?
My tight end will be Travis Kelce.
Damn it.
So that was going to be yours?
I was thinking
you could take his counterpart.
Do I want to, though?
You already have two people in that game.
I got him on both opposite sides of the ball.
I know.
Yeah, I'll go Rob Gronkowski. Sure.
You're going the Gronk, huh?
Yeah.
He might be the better play here than Kelce.
And for defense,
oh, we're doing that too.
Are we doing flex?
We could do defense.
Do you want to do defense and flex?
Why don't we just do flex? No defense. How about that?
Okay. You ready for this? Juju Smith-Schuster.
Smith-Schuster.
Smith-Schuster. Shaboopy, shaboopy, shaboopy.
So you could take anybody. You took Juju Smith-Schuster, huh? That's good. That's interesting.
Not all the players who do good are like, that's the guy that's going to do good that game. You got to play it out. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it.
Yellow Dog knows it.
Who?
Nothing. My flex. Man, I really want to take Antonio Brown, but I'm not. I'm going to take Christian McCaffrey.
Of all the people, you're going to take Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, he's going to have 10 receptions, probably 120 total yards, and a touchdown.
It's a big game.
Cool.
He's not backing it up.
So let's recap.
10 push-ups on the line.
Let's recap the teams. You ready?
Sure.
I have Matt Ryan.
Okay.
Todd Gurley.
Okay.
Julio Jones.
Okay.
Travis Kelce.
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey.
Okay.
And Jeff's team is Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Sony Michel.
Oh, yeah.
Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski.
Oh, yeah.
And Juju
Smith-Schuster, baby.
All right.
Don't believe me, just watch.
So if you want to tell Jeff how terrible his team is, you can @Jeff Melanoff on
stop
Twitter.
It. I'm sorry that you have the best running back in the league. That's fair.
Hey,
and you didn't pick either Mahomes or Brady either.
You're right.
And you were giving me guff about that.
Because I took Matt Ryan.
Whatever. Okay.
They call him Matty Ice.
They call him Matty. Well, okay.
That's such a terrible nickname. That's one of the worst nicknames.
Well, it's like Joe. It was like a Joe Cool type of nickname. Like he's cool under pressure, but
but
he's not. Cool
it's a play on Natty Ice beer, and that's just not what you wanted to be named
it
after.
also means he's cool under pressure, but he's really not. Under pressure.
All I think about is budget
pushing
beer.
Down on what?
All I think about when I hear Matty Ice's budget beer, and that's not good.
So what about Matty Light? Matt Light.
Yeah, that's the same
Mud
thing.
Light. Bud Light.
So, give me some players here that you didn't pick that you were considering.
I was definitely considering
the two quarterbacks in the Chiefs-Patriots game.
I was thinking of Mahomes, to be honest, but I didn't want to go to the obvious pick. I had to go with someone that I...
What other running back were you going to take if you didn't take Michelle?
I was going to take Gurley, but I also was thinking about David Johnson.
Okay. And then Tyreek Hill. I think that's an obvious pick. Was there another receiver that you were interested in?
No, Tyreek Hill was Bay.
Julio Jones, man. He's going to do it. This is going to be the game.
Watch him get 0 receptions for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns.
I do automatically lose if Matt Ryan gets injured in this game.
Yeah, that's about right. Who's their backup? Mr. Nobody?
I don't know.
A.J. McCarron.
So you wanted Kelce over Gronk?
Yeah.
So you basically wanted 2 of my 5 players.
No,
that was your number one.
Honestly, I couldn't think of any other tight ends that would have a good game besides Kelce. And then I was like, oh, wait,
Greg
Gronk.
Olsen maybe, but he's a risk.
Yeah. And I was also thinking about Antonio Gates, but I was like, it's playing the Cleveland defense, so...
Okay. So any last thoughts for the listeners out there about their fantasy teams, fantasy lineup advice that you want to give?
If you have any of our players, you should be fine.
Except for the ones we told you to sit.
Yeah, do not. I meant in our lineup we have on our bet.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying now.
This should be a high-scoring bet. You should be fine if you have at least 2 of those guys on your team.
Yeah.
I can see that. I can see a lineup that's realistic like that.
Hey, I want to talk to you about something interesting.
What is it, Mark?
There's this new fantasy football league style, and I want to talk to you about it. You get 10, you can get 12, but we'll say 10 teams in this example, so I can lay out the groundwork for you. You get 10 teams. 9 teams draft. 1 team does not draft at all. Okay, it's called a vampire league. Have you heard of this?
I know I haven't actually.
This is very interesting. Let me know if you're.
Can I guess it?
No. You're not going to guess it. If you've never heard of it, you have never heard this.
If one team doesn't draft, I'm assuming they're taking every one that's like waivers and free agency type.
Okay, so the team that does not draft. So you do the draft normal with the 9 teams. Remember, we're doing that out of 10-team league. So 9 teams draft normal. The 10th team doesn't draft. They pick up a team solely from free agents and waivers.
So what I just said.
Yes, but it's way more in-depth than what you're saying. Okay, so you start off there. If that team... So let's say my team's a vampire team, okay? If my team beats a team in the league, I can switch any player that I want from your team to my team from that week. So if you have Todd Gurley and I have Bilal Powell and my team wins, I can swap that.
Wow, that's rough.
There's way more to this.
Okay, I'm listening.
So get this, okay? So not only do you swap, but you're also the only team that can pick up players from the waiver wire. Whoever you draft on the other 9 teams.
Keeper league in some cases.
No, it's not a keeper league. It's not year to year. But
a keeper season.
Yes. So whoever you draft, Jeff, let's say your team is not one of the vampire. I'm the vampire team. You're a normal team in the league. You can't pick up any players for the rest of the season. So that means that you have to have. You don't have to, but you would be wanting to have 2 quarterbacks, 2 kickers, 2 defenses, because you can't pick up players. So you have to be careful about bye weeks basically. And things like that. Okay, so here's an interesting thing, though. If you lose to the vampire team, they can take any of your players. However, you can choose when you play me. Are you following? This is important. I need your attention.
I am attention.
When your team is playing my team, and I'm the vampire team, and you know that if I beat you, I can take any of your players. I only could take one of your starters. So if you had Todd Gurley, you could sit him that week in case you lost.
That's a risk, though.
Right. So you could take a loss on purpose.
So you have to take a starter. It cannot be anybody.
Right. So you can take a loss on purpose to avoid losing your best player, or you can sit your best players.
Not a bad idea, actually.
To avoid me stealing them. So it brings up an interesting concept, right?
There it is.
But if you think about it, you could have started a team this year, or at least through the weeks, and have guys like Sony Michel on your roster, Matt Breida.
I like this system.
There's players out there that you could have had that, you get started with Ryan Fitzpatrick for the first couple weeks, Patrick Mahomes possibly. It's interesting, isn't it?
It's a very interesting. I would hate
something
to,
to consider
league,
for
to
next.
Be honest.
Yeah, I don't know if you just pull a name randomly to see who the vampire team is.
Probably like a bet, like you play Mario Kart or something. Last place person gets vampire.
Yeah,
that'd be a fun way to do it.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept. It's something I heard about. I'm interested in this. I think I might do one next year. Who told you about this?
Your friend or something?
I actually read it online, and I was interested. It was on Twitter. Somebody had said, have you ever tried Vampire League? And I was like, what is this? But anyways,
I'm intrigued.
That's all we got for today. I hope your guys' fantasy teams do well, except for if they're playing against mine. I hope Jeff's team that we just picked here doesn't do that great. Mine does a little bit better. It's a 10 push-up bet, right?
Yeah,
10 push-up.
I'm winning 1-0 so far.
All right, so we'll be back Monday to talk about the action from this weekend.
We will see you on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.